Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council for Monday, July 31st, 2023. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Ms. Colacetti?
Here.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Wilkin? Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
We don't have minutes in the...
There's no minutes.
No, okay, those will be next week. All right, we do have some adjustments to the agenda. And we're looking at the agenda that appeared in the packet that was posted this morning. So under H, item 2C, that's a duplicate, so you can delete item H2C. And, okay, so the resolution 075R, okay, that's gone.
I don't see a 2C.
It's a totally different agenda.
Even for this one,
This one, okay. All right, we're good. All right. We had agenda software challenges this week, so we had several different versions of an agenda, but I think we're on the same page now.
and I would like to add, during presentations and public input, a short presentation from me and Robert Lewis.
Okay, we will do the oath of office for Chief of Police. We'll move to the presentation, and then we'll do public input tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I need a motion to put that on the agenda.
I move for there to be an addition of a short presentation from me and Robert Lewis regarding the Hope Village project.
Second.
Moved by Sharice, seconded by Mary Alice. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, and again, that will go after the oath of office. Okay. No, because it's off yeah. Bear with me tonight. Like I said, I'm working from, I think, 3 different agendas, so we're good. Okay. But we know what comes next, and that is the oath of office for the Chief of Police for the City of Urbana. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Chief Larry Boone to the City of Urbana. This is his first day on the job. This follows a intentional, very thorough, very careful nationwide search to find a police chief that is best for the City of Urbana, and we have found him in Chief Larry Boone. He comes to us from Norfolk, Virginia. We've heard a lot about him. His biography's been out there, and I frankly forgot to bring it, so I am going to just get right down to it, administer the oath, and then Chief will have a few words to say to the council. So, you repeat after me, and you can read along there if you'd like. I, Larry Boone,
I, Larry Boone,
having been appointed to the office of Police Chief in the City of Urbana,
having been appointed to the office of Police Chief in the City of Urbana,
in the County of Champaign,
in the
Illinois,
County of Champaign, Illinois,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Police Chief to the best of my ability.
that's a mouthful, that I will faithfully discharge the duties in the office of Police Chief in the State of Illinois
To the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Congratulations.
All right.
Welcome.
Look at that.
You're official.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I know you have a lot on your plate, you know, life is full, but I really appreciate you showing up here. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to these gentlemen here and the men and women in the back of the room there. I want to extend my appreciation to the mayor and her staff and believing in me and what I am able to bring to this city, to the community. You will see a different police department. I think some of you for the first time have seen these gentlemen dressed out in their blues. This is the start of something different, something new. We're going to be intentional to the best of our ability. We're going to serve you to the best of our ability. We're going to hold each other accountable to the best of our ability. Conversely, we're going to hold you responsible as well. Each of these women and men know that this job is difficult. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the oath. I simply submit to you, when times are tough, and there will be difficult times, please allow us an opportunity to provide you the facts before rendering an opinion. I promise you I will always be transparent with you. I will never hide anything that's in my purview of control. To the women and men of the Law Enforcement Division, I will always support you as long as you adhere to policies in your training. There will be mistakes, but there will be few mistakes. I know that because I come from a department of 250,000 people and 700 officers, and there were many times that we got it right, more so than we got it wrong. And they will happen, and we will deal with it. And we will deal with it from a position of compassion, unless it's illegal. I will not tolerate illegal activity from anyone. I will swiftly take action, and you will know about it. The City Council, I will hold you responsible and accountable as well, because you're going to hold me, and I expect you to as well. There will be moments of disagreement. There will be moments you don't necessarily agree with me, and that's okay, because this country is built on compromise, and we will compromise to see that this city, this department, this community, the business community, as well as our faith-based leaders, do our very darndest to ensure that Urbana is a place where one can work and play and live. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you going forward, this will be a different department the moment I walk out this door. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for listening. Bye-bye. Madam Mayor?
Yes.
One more thing. I'm sorry. You know, this has been a long process, as the mayor has indicated. And I can tell you, there's one individual in here that I typically do not single out anyone, but she was fantastic throughout this process. She got with me in private spaces and told me about the beauty of the city, about the officers, and I'm telling you, she loves you guys. She loves you guys. The leadership of the mayor and how together that we could be a better Urbana. She was persistent and on time with respect to our meetings, with respect to our policy opportunities that we had to undertake, and that's no one other than Ms. Famie Fletcher. Famie, thank you. Thank you to you and your staff. Now I'm done.
Are you sure? Okay. I also want to recognize we have with us tonight Chief Timothy Tyler from the City of Champaign. Thank you for being here. Tracy Parsons from the Community Coalition, Minnie Pearson from the NAACP. They all had assisted us during the search and the interviews, and I appreciate their assistance there. So now the work really begins. Thank you.
Get it? Get it? Get it? Let's get it. Let's go in the hallway. All right. Come on.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a presentation by Sharice Hersey. Robert Lewis, would you come on up to the table? Welcome, and please state your name for the record. And you have 10 minutes.
Hello, City Council. I'm Sharice Hersey, Alderman of Ward 3. I'm going to start off with reading a letter from residents in.
When I have to introduce myself first.
Yes, you should introduce yourself.
My name is Robert Lewis, citizen of Urbana, former council member.
North End Meeting, New Free Will Baptist Church, July 28th, 2023. We, the undersigned, appreciate the support and advocacy of our alderperson, Sharice Hersey. We believe our best path forward to ensure our community is not legislated over is that we bring every skilled advocate to the table at City Council. We respectfully request that you add a request for a presentation to Urbana City Council this Monday with Robert Lewis to highlight infrastructural concerns regarding the Hope Village plan, and we pledge to attend the Urbana City Council in support. And it's undersigned by 11 citizens that were in attendance at that meeting, and I'm going to give this to Ms. Clark to enter into the minutes. Our issues, and as I've stated before, it's not that I am against institution or something that helps the chronically homeless and the medically fragile. It is the location, and that the fact that there are not the amenities that are needed to help to sustain yet another fragile community within our already marginalized community, so to speak. Since stating that and having stated it a few times, after the presentation last week regarding the preliminary PUD, I was looking at the map where this is on, and I called Mr. Lewis to get some information regarding the main water line that seems to be going through that particular community. I also made several phone calls to different people, John Zeman with Urbana, Marcello Grady with Champaign, Davion Williams, who's the alderperson in Champaign and covers that area. And I was pretty dismayed regarding what is underlining some of this. One of the things is that, and it'd probably be better, Mr. Lewis, for you to explain than for me to explain. Okay.
Sharice came to me with this document of several pages of stuff last
Mr.
week.
Lewis, can you speak into the mic?
I'm trying to.
We have to pull it closer to you.
Sharice came to me and was asking me to take a look at this plan, and I have some experience with this plan because we brought before the City Council some years ago a proposal for the Church of the Living God on the same site. And I was intensely involved in this site. And one of the things that bothered me the most was the fact that the main water line for the city of Urbana crosses it at about a 45-degree angle from west to east. And it also has an impact on any kind of facility you provide with regard to sanitary sewers and also detention. And I won't prolong this, but this particular site violated a number of rules as it relates to what you can do over an existing easement. The reason for the easement in the water line situation is to make sure that they can get to it and repair it if necessary. At this point, when Sharice went and asked about it, it was either there or maybe it's going to be abandoned. We don't know what it is now. But from an engineering standpoint, when I see a drawing like this and it's got it identified, I got to recognize that in the design. Right now, I have a little larger one, and I went over it with her, and she was supposed to do this, but I'm working with her. I noticed that when you have an easement like that, you cannot violate it with materials that are impervious. You have to do it with materials that are impervious. Well, you can allow things to go through it, okay? I'll make it simple. And that complicates it more so if you have like a parking lot and you got to make a section where you got to cut a 20-foot swatch through it at some point in time in the future. That's part of the concerns with infrastructure. The main sewage line runs north and south. It's to the east, and it crosses this line from all of these facilities. So you got to make sure, I'm here to admonish the council to have their engineering staff take a hard look at this to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before you act on it. I'm not against this program at all. But in terms of when I started looking at it closer, I noticed that the detention for water, I know that in previous years, the Army Corps of Engineers has reestablished their floodplains. And a portion of the northern part of Goodwin Avenue has been consumed for detention basin for the 100-year flood. They've already done that. You may not see it because it's going to be a dry bed. I looked at this plan, and I look at the topographic land on this plan. I see they have a detention basin in the uppermost section, which we're not pumping water uphill, I don't think, but it's either a dry bed, I'm assuming. There's a lot of assumptions you have to make about this plan that you may not be aware of, and I think your engineering staff can advise you on. I'm not in a position to do that for you, but I want to point them out so that it looks as if somebody got the cart before the horse in this situation. And they have to take a hard look at it from your engineering staff to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It's not that I'm against it. I like little tiny homes myself. I looked at these, they're 900 square feet, and you got, a community center, about 2,300 square feet. But access is critical, especially when you have emergency accesses and stuff like that, getting vehicles in and out in an expeditious way. And the approach here from the south is not the best in the world. And I'll leave it at that.
And my questions are also regarding the access from the south and what seems to be the overlooking a historical black subdivision, Carver Park, and not really engaging with the residents of Carver Park to either get their permission at least or give them decent information. There have been a couple of people here that have come at public input from Carver Park. I spoke with a resident there, and he informed me that a lot of the residents that now live in Carver Park are renters and not owners. And so it seems to me kind of unfair, or maybe I would say a violation of these residents to just assume. I don't know if there is, and I did talk to Davion Williams. I asked him if he knew of any kind of memo of understanding or IGA between Champaign the Hope Village project or anything regarding how they would access this particular PUD through Carver Drive, Carver Park. He knew nothing about it. In speaking to this resident, he just told me that they got a letter. He couldn't really even tell me what what was in the letter because he just said it just seemed to him like they were saying, well, this is what we're going to do. And there's not a lot of fight in that community, to be honest. And so I think it's kind of my responsibility to say something on their behalf. I would not appreciate anybody just, bulldozing their way through my neighborhood and all I get is a letter or a meeting, or one meeting. There's only been 2 meetings regarding this public information or engagement. But I found that there hadn't been any public engagement with the community just to the south of them. And I don't know, I just thought that was kind of dismissive. And I felt the need to actually say something before we decide to vote for approval for this, because this voting approval for even the preliminary is, I believe, going to cause a whole lot of other issues. If you don't know, if all the T's aren't crossed and the I's aren't dotted, when we can get ahead of any kind of issue that might happen in the near future, I don't care if it's 6 months, 6 years, or 60 years from now. If it's something that can be alleviated now, then this is the time to do it. So that's what I want to say in the nicest way that I can say it.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to public input. If you'd like to address the council, please step up to the microphone and state your name for the record. And you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Owens, and I live in the Urbana North End. And I'd like to read a statement that the people of the North End and also the people of Carver Park would agree with this statement that I'm about to present. We residents of Urbana's North End by the proposed Hope Village site. We are residents of the Urbana's North End by the proposed Hope Village site. We are concerned that the Hope Village project is being approved without necessary due diligence. Already the drainage system and sewer system strains or fails to meet the needs of residents nearby. Simply connecting to those systems is not going to work without significant negative impact to our community. It was stated at one meeting that anytime it rains in Carver Park, it becomes a lake, and nothing has been done about it for years, and people have complained, and nothing has been done about it for years. We urge the city of Urbana to listen to Robert Lewis, whose expertise can expand on these and other issues in detail, and to listen to our alderperson, Sharice Hersey. We understand that the facts about our existing infrastructure, we believe the City of Urbana Council will agree the project needs to be substantially replanned. What you can do is to vote to keep the agenda item in committee. This will give project planners the time to take our concerns into account instead of simply shrinking the initial scope of the project. Please listen to us. Give our concerns the consideration you give to the neighborhoods like the Western Urbana Neighborhood Association. This is the first step in earning our trust in a process that has significantly exacerbated generational trauma and distrust. Take that step with us. Walk with us. Listen to us. And please don't legislate over us. It's a big concern for that community. That's a historic community. I'm not understanding why, if this is an Urbana project, they're going through a Champaign community to take the entrance into it. And that question hasn't been answered properly for us. So the people would really like you all to take in consideration and think about what's going to happen to a community once you start bulldozing through and shrinking the acreage of the community. What's going to happen to the kids that are playing there in the community? I mean, it'll be a devastating thing to happen without really our input or consent. Thank you.
Doesn't start ticking till you're there.
Set up. My name
Terry,
is
you can take the
Townsend,
mic and sit down.
I am.
You can take the mic off the thing and then have a seat.
Oh well, that's
That'll
okay.
be-
I'm gonna try to stay, and I'm trying to show everybody I'm getting better.
Okay.
Terry Townsend. I'm the first African American housing officer of the Housing Authority of Champaign County. I've been advising the city of Urbana and.
Can you get a little closer to the mic,
Okay.
Mr. Townsend?
Okay.
Thank you.
I've been advising the city of Urbana and Champaign and the county on housing issues since roughly around 1980, and I've had great success. When I was asked to come tonight, I thought about this. I support Hope Village. I've supported the concept in other cities that I've been in and advised them about homelessness and how we could eliminate it. But we don't want to do something good and at the same time do something bad. So I'm asking you to table. Still couldn't hear me? Okay. I'm asking you to table. What is this ordinance? 2023-07-022. The George Washington Carver Historical Neighborhood, first African-American neighborhood in Champaign-Urbana. The impetus for that was really when airmen at Chanute Air Force Base couldn't find housing. When I joined the Housing Authority Board and I became vice chairman, I looked at some of those records and what was going on. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But that neighborhood, it gave hope to Christmas addicts, Ellis Addition, and to many other things in Champaign County. So what I'm concerned about, that we not take these things in consideration. Not saying that I'm opposed, again. I'm asking that you table this for now and take in consideration Alderman Hersey and former Alderman Robert Lewis's research so that we do this right. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Hattie Polk, and I'm a lifelong member here in Champaign and Urbana. My family were the first black settlers to come into Champaign and Urbana, founders of the first church of God in Christ here in Urbana. I have a vested interest in here, and for those of you who don't know, I used to be the director of the Champaign Schools Family Information Center, where I was in charge of taking care of the assignments for the Controlled Choice Program for Champaign schools. So I do have some knowledge, but my concern is that what is coming into there, I was on Francis Nelson's board when that was taken out of the neighborhood. And the one thing that hurt me and people in the community, that African Americans could not go to doctors and stuff. So Francis Nelson came about by those who are in the community. Then what happened, we got some people on the board that had a vested interest in the hospitals. Francis Nelson was taken away, and they were moved over on Prospect. But the thing that really got to me when we think about our heritage and what we had here in Champaign and Urbana, that was burned down so the fire department would know how to put out a fire when all of the people in that community had fought to get that for Francis Nelson. Now, I'll give you that history, but I want you to know when we're talking about what you want to put up there, we had a meeting over at the church, and we asked them, how many sites did you look at? And you know what they told us? 18. They couldn't name but one other than the one that they've got set up. Didn't know. The other thing is that you're bringing in people who've got problems with violence. that you're going to be catering to. The other ones that you're going to be catering to are the dying, and you're going to be doing work on them. My concern then was, are you bringing these people in almost like the Tuskegee Project? I don't know. But you're going to be doing those people that are sick and dying up there. The other thing said, well, we're going to bring in some food where that they could come and shop. It's ironic when you only got the food truck is only 4 blocks away, where it's at the Church of the Living God where they're coming there. So when we're talking about what we're doing to bring this into the community, take into consideration the school is right over there, not too far. You've got the churches that's over there. The other thing that's happened in that neighborhood, did you know that the fire department is coming right into the neighborhood over there as well? It's and then you talk about the letters. No letters were sent out through the mail. You know where the letters were? Put in the doors of people's houses. That's how I found out about it, because it was stuck in my door. So what I want to ask you to do is take into consideration what you're doing to this historical area over there and putting the people in. I'm not against homeless people, so let me make that clear. However, if you're putting in homeless, you're saying you're putting people in there that's already got mental problems with violence and stuff, why would you put that in the neighborhood? Would you want it in your neighborhood? So what I'm saying to you today is that you take into consideration, would you want your kids exposed to all of that? And right up at Francis Nelson, it's a lot of children. And when you say that most people are renters, know this, that they may be renters, but it's African-American people who own that property up there. And many of them are people who cannot afford, they've rented it out to help people out. But then you turn around and they're not renting it for that much. So they would not be able to get any place else. So what I'm saying to you is you take into consideration that this is a historical area. Now you want to put people up there that are fragile, sure. You want to help them out, but don't put somebody up in there that's violent, that's going to make violence in the community. And that's what they said to us. Any
Thank
question?
you. Thank you.
Okay.
Alan Axelrod. I'm a resident in Urbana. I live on Sunset Drive on the north end. Been there for 7 years. We're not opposed to Hope Village. We're opposed to a lack of rigor with good intentions having negative impact on our residents, on our community. One of the things that might not be clear to you all is which meetings are we talking about, which meetings happened. There were a lot of meetings. So earlier, there was a meeting that was referenced on July 13th. That was the meeting that CCHCC, the university, et cetera, hosted as a community listening session. There was subsequently on the 21st and the 28th, gathering of folks on the north end to talk about our concerns about this issue and to try and relay it to you all on the city council. Because regardless of agreements and whatnot, you can understand how this pulls at generational tensions. You can understand why it's important that the city demonstrate to the residents that you are willing to do the due diligence on this project because you care about them. A common reoccurrence here and elsewhere is that there are other relationships prioritized over your constituency, your residents. And those concerns are conveyed to you, and agreements that you have made with other entities are referenced and given priority over the concerns that are valid and expressed to you. So I'm just asking that you understand those concerns, you listen through disagreements, and recognize that maybe the homework assignment wasn't fully done. Maybe you should extend the deadline. It's not a very radical thing that's being asked here. And I hope that you all come away from tonight showing that you have listened to and prioritized residents on the North End. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council?
Good evening. My name is Eldris Melinda Carr, and I am also asking, as part of the newly formed North End United Community Organization, for the City Council to reconsider approving the Hope Village Plan Unit Development Project on tonight, and instead to keep it in committee. And I've been involved. I just got in the middle of what's been happening because I've been a part of the Dr. Ellis sewer project. And for 50 years, we know that some unprecedented things happen for the Dr. Ellis to fight for what they're going to be getting sometime in the future. The process dating back to December for our alderperson was inequitable. There was only one option, and that was in her ward. Those other options weren't revealed until April. It's because of she announced those options. I said that at the Plan Commission on July 13th. Some other things I said were related to the fact that the residents, the homeowners, are concerned. There's past history. There's Bristol Place. I was involved in that as president of the Minister Alliance. I was involved in the protests. I saw people having their homes displaced. People who don't understand, don't really know why people see the patterns of things that are happening. And when statements aren't made to say, with the three entities, we do not have plans to redevelop your area. Put that in writing. I said that on July, the New Free Will Baptist Church meeting. Transparency, lack of trust because of these issues. I mentioned at the July 13th Plan Commission meeting about Skelton Place that was on campus. So I found an article, News Gazette, just a few years ago when that was sold. The Housing Authority of Champaign County is selling its former Skelton Place facility to Green Street Realty, and has been moving residents to new locations. We sold it to Green Street Realty for $5 million, said David Northern, the Housing Authority's CEO. Quote, it was used for traditional public housing built in 1967 with 84 units. It was a mixed-use building with seniors and people with special needs. I don't have the other part of it, but it talked about the amenities that they moved from that area so they can have amenities in the area they were moving to, which is now the Haven near Walmart, because they said they didn't have that in the campus area. And I just want to mention this. This is past history, but we need to talk about these things. Just a few years ago, 2020, a lawsuit with Carl and the city, right? So posted on the website, we are grateful to have prevailed, last sentence, we are grateful to have prevailed on 2 counts in this lawsuit. If we had not, the judgment against us would have been significantly larger. Over the next few weeks, the city will consider our options going forward. As always, we will work for the long-term health and well-being of our community. That's what we're asking you to do. We're not coming here. It takes courage to come up here with 3 big players. We're not doing this for our health. It takes something for us to do this. Sometimes it's just 3 of us. We're not doing this for our health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Bailey. I'm a resident of the Dr. Ellis subdivision, and I've been working with this for a while now. I've seen a lot, I've heard a lot, and I understand. And as I've said before, I am not against Hope Village. There are other underlying factors here that needs to be addressed as well, because I share the same concerns as the other residents of the area. But I also see climate change, sustainability, and carbon foot reduction in this as well, and that can get complicated. I think that it would be a good idea for us to deal with the infrastructure first, because I know as a resident of that area, if I was a resident of Carver Park, I would be very disheartened for you to build a substantial community over there with detention bases, and we are still flooding. And I'm still wondering, where's the city of Champaign in this, because that gets complicated too. You're jumping from Urbana to Champaign to Urbana. Something needs to be clarified there. And I'd also like to know, where will Hope Village hook into? Where will their sewage hook into? Will it hook into Carver Park, or will it go towards that soft business area over there? There's still a lot of questions to be answered. I would also like to know why the Church of the Living God pulled out and why Union Gardens pulled out. It seems to me that it must be something going on in that area that needs to be addressed. Also, with the Hope Village, I don't know exactly, I know what they said, how it started, but also I do remember seeing on the news that a bunch of people got together, city officials or who have you, and slept on the streets with these people to see how that felt. I would invite you to rent a house in Carver Park and live up there for a while, and you will see a difference. Some things that's put in that area, that's put on that area, is not of that area. I've seen people outside of that area come in to do their little dirty work and then slide on back on the other side of town. I also know that areas like that are targeted because it's a poor area and the people are more vulnerable and the infrastructure is deteriorating. It's cheaper. Funds have also, from the federal, national, however you want to say it, level, have been allocated for poor areas that are diverted to other projects in other areas. Now, when these poor areas do receive some of these funds that has been allocated to them and diverted to other areas, they only receive a few cents out of each dollar. Now, it's time for a change. I understand these people are sick, and I'm wondering why no one's getting well anymore. We would like to see this table and sent back to committee so that we can do some further studying on this, so that you can, actually, I've already took a look at it, on this, and give it more consideration. There's some more questions need to be answered here, because this city council may not be here when the next phase comes through. And what happens then? We only know about the preliminaries. It's a lot more to be discussed here. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Audra Owens, and I too am a resident of the North End, specifically the Ellis Drive addition and further down. And I have come to this project very late, and I am still trying to learn all details. But the one thing that I have learned is, well, I looked up the history of Carver Park. And as Mr. Lewis said, I think it was Mr. Lewis, he was saying how it had to do with the Tuskegee Airmen. We had to have some place to put the Tuskegee Airmen because even though they were allowed to fight eventually in World War II, they were not allowed to live in the housing up there. So they hastily built Carver Park and Crispus Attucks Park. And it was substandard, but it was a place for them to live. And it just seems like now history is beginning to repeat itself all over again. This neighborhood could benefit from all of the funds that it might take in order to build and supply sewage and whatever to Hope Village. And again, like everybody has stated, I am all for housing for people who are sick, for people who are homeless. But right now, it seems like the cities of Champaign and the cities of Urbana are turning their backs on the residents who are there, who have historically been there, have asked for help, and are now being, again, ignored.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the council?
Hello, my name is Claudia Lenhoff, and I'm the Executive Director of Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. I know we will have an opportunity later on the agenda, possibly if y'all have questions for us. I could not stand by as I listen to some comments that are very, based on very negative stereotypes of who the homeless are, very prejudicial descriptions of people who are homeless as being violent and mentally unstable. We have been very clear that Hope Village is for people who have experienced chronic homelessness who are medically fragile. Let me give you some examples. Right now, we have clients at Healthcare Consumers, 4 clients who are Urbana residents. They're homeless, but they're from Urbana. 3 of them are terminally ill with cancer. They don't have a place that is their own to lay their heads at night. They don't have peace at the end of their lives. These are the people who we want to try to serve. These individuals will not live long enough to see Hope Village built, but there will surely be more after them. We also have another client who uses a lot of Urbana resources, including police services, because he is hard to house. He was housed, but it was in an apartment place. He had a neighbor next door. They had tensions. He was fragile. There was no physical altercation, but he was fragile. He ended up in the hospital for 14 days and then was evicted from his apartment. He has a family member who's working really hard to try to get him housed. There are police officers in the city of Urbana who help this gentleman almost every single week with something. I think it's really important to understand that homeless individuals, first of all, are human beings. Second of all, any of us can become homeless. Any of us can have our lives totally destabilized because of something that happens with our health, a brain injury, anything. And all we are trying to do, very mindfully of the neighborhood as well, is to serve 30 individuals, give them permanent homes, and they are medically fragile. We never, ever describe people as violent. We never, ever describe people as mentally unstable. Those are words that come from people's preconceived notions of who is homeless. The homeless individuals we are hoping to serve through Hope Village are far more likely to become victims of crime than to ever be perpetrators of crime. There's many other issues that have been brought up, some that have nothing to do with Hope Village, but some that do, and we can address those later. But I wanted to be very clear that we have been very clear in our communications at every meeting, going door to door throughout the neighborhood, talking to people, and telling them who the individuals are who Hope Village is designed to serve. These are the people who fall through the cracks of our current housing system. And I apologize, I am emotional about this. I've worked with people who needed Hope Village, who didn't live long enough to see it. They're the ones who helped inspire it. And it is very painful to hear people describe homeless individuals as de facto violent, de facto mentally unstable. That is not fair. It is not right. It is not who will be living at Hope Village. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Marlin and City Council and staff. My name is Deshaun Williams, and I actually went back and forth on whether or not I was going to make this statement here today, but I do want to, express some thoughts to my historians and my folks back here who, have lived through the test of time, through the changes and whatnot. I want to acknowledge you in saying that I understand completely, your desire to ensure that while we are in search of equality, in a sense, that ensuring that, folks have equal housing, equal opportunities, and that they are essentially getting off the streets. While we're doing that, we can't allow for y'all to go and fall backwards, right? So as I am saying this statement, I want to make it very clear that I understand, your thought processes in that. Last week, I heard multiple individuals speaking, in regards to, the community expressing concern and even a sense of fear, of having neighbors having former homeless individuals become neighbors. And one thing that I said, research shown that homeless folks are far less likely to commit crime when they have someone somewhere to call home. But we have to ensure that it's done right. I had an opportunity I won't even call it an opportunity. I'm gonna go off my notes. I have a mentee who's 10 years old, who I had to literally go, it just so happens that my wife was going to Walmart and she seen this young man who was essentially on the curb getting ready to get detained because he was stealing. Went up to him. He had no home. He has no family. His parents are dead. He's here. He was living with his grandmother. His grandmother's sick. He's 10 years old. My son is 8. So while I understand y'all concern, I also understand your concern, right? Because at any given time, that 10-year-old could be my son. My son is 8. So I just want to say that it is very necessary for us to have a situation where, programs such as the CU at Homes, where they provide these opportunities for folks to have a resurgence, to get another opportunity at life, to succeed. While it's very, very, very important that we provide that opportunity, we have to work together to ensure that we don't get left behind as well. And that's what I think that's ultimately what we have an opportunity to kind of work together to ensure that both sides are able to meet in the middle, if that makes sense. So I just want to encourage you all to understand and know that while this is a difficult decision, it is a very necessary decision. And at the end of the day, the decision isn't going to go away. So how do we get to that finish line? We all want to get to the same goal at hand. How do we get there together? So that's all my time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
Hello, my name is Lisa Dixon, and I'm a resident of Champaign. And I just wanted to address some of the things that I understand, or maybe need to get some answers to, perhaps later on in tonight's meeting. One of the things I do recognize that I think a lot of the residents have been very clear about is the idea that there's a food desert on the north end, that there is needed infrastructure help and shoring up, and I absolutely agree with that. I guess my puzzlement comes from whether or not folks think, and I'm curious as to what the council thinks as well, whether or not folks think that this project will take things away from the current residents of Carver specifically and the North End generally. My understanding is that there is no part of the pie that will be taken away from folks, and that hopefully, my understanding from looking at the plans and things, is that perhaps some small measures may be added to it. There may be some help added to it and other things going along that things may grow over time. I want to be very clear that from what I know from the plans, and I have seen what most of the residents have seen in terms of in these meetings having this information, there is absolutely no experimentation of any kind on the Hope Village residents, that there will be support services that will be run out of the community center, support services for medical help and other things, but there's no kind of experimentation. So I want to just be really clear about that. Folks have already mentioned that they're talking about medically fragile folks, and that medically fragile folks are usually much more often the victims of crime and not the perpetrators, but that my recognition from what I have seen of the presentation of these plans, again, is that there's been a lot of thought put into the mental health needs of folks who have experienced the trauma of homelessness, and that the village would be built with some very specific things that will help them to feel and keep safe in their homes. Also, it is my understanding that the money for the Hope Village projects is not being taken in any way, shape, or form from anything that might be given to the North End or Carver residents. So I just want to make that very clear also, because again, it isn't that we want to take from, we want to add to. Also, it is my understanding that the project will in no way change anything physical about about the village, about the neighborhood, that this is going to be happening on a new and completely different plot of land. There will not be extra roads built in and out. There will, of course, be the issue of construction over time, which is what happens with anything, but no homes will be torn down. Nobody will be forced to move or leave in any way, shape, or form. So I wanted to be clear about that. And then also, I'm just curious about, again, this may be answered at some other point, but people are talking about wanting to table this motion, and I'm curious, folks are saying that they don't have information, they don't have enough information, and I know that folks having said that they had a neighborhood meeting, that folks from CCHCC would be happy to come and talk with folks in the neighborhood about this more so if there is more information that is needed. So the two meetings that have been set up by CCHCC and U of I and Carl were informational meetings, but also to get information from folks. I know there is an email address that folks can write to have questions answered. And I also know that folks are very willing to converse with people about what their concerns are. They need only have an invitation. So I see that we are at 10:09:08, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the council? Okay. Thank you for your input tonight. We'll move on to council input and communications. Chris.
Yeah, I wanted to announce that we too, in Ward 2, will be having a meeting about a homeless shelter on 410 West Springfield. See You at Home will be proposing a mid-barrier shelter at that address, and we are going to have a come one, come all community meeting at the Phillips Recreation Center, 505 West Stoughton, on Thursday, August 17th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And See You at Home will be there to take every resident's question and concerns and to discuss that plan at 410 West Springfield. Again, that's Phillips Recreation Center, August 17th, Thursday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Any other council member comments? James, and then Chandra.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the Silverwood block party, which happened on Saturday. I want to thank the Silver Hearts group for pulling that together again. We had many groups there, lots of folks in the community coming out and enjoying food and bubbles and all kinds of fun. Urbana Park District was there, the fire department, Urbana Fire Department was there, University Police Department was there, Urbana Free Library. I'm sure several others that I'm forgetting, but it was a good community building opportunity. It's we've been doing it every year. It wasn't the hottest day of the year. It was the day before, I think. But I do want to thank Silver Hearts for keeping that going and the value it provides in creating a feeling of community in that neighborhood.
Chandra.
I want to just highlight this back to school school supply giveaway that's happening out at Napleton's Auto Park next Sunday on the 6th. It starts at 2 p.m. and they'll keep going until they're out of school supplies. And it's a drive-through, so you'll stay in your vehicle and your children must be present to receive these filled backpacks. So again, that's at Napleton's next Sunday starting at 2 p.m. And then I also want to make a comment about the two items on the agenda related to homelessness. As members of what I sure hope is a compassionate city, it is our moral and ethical responsibility to help those less fortunate and work toward creating a more inclusive and caring community. A lot of what I heard last week and some of what I heard this week has been kind of dismaying. Not every unhoused person is a criminal. Homelessness has a profound effect on both the individual and the community. Implementing effective programs can make a positive impact. It has been a goal of this council to reduce homelessness in our city. Investing in and supporting homelessness programs and initiatives can and will assist in breaking the cycle of poverty and homelessness for generations to come. About 11% of Urbana's population lives below the poverty level, so there are many people who are just a few paychecks away from homelessness or one medical diagnosis away from homelessness. So the two items on the agenda tonight addressing the reduction of homelessness has my full support. Thank you.
Any other council comments? Okay. We'll move on to reports, unfinished business. There is none. Reports of the Standing Committee, Committee of the Whole.
Great. On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, there are two items on the consent agenda. One did not make it due to that agenda error that was previously mentioned. So on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I'd like to recommend resolution number 2023-07-074R, resolution authorizing city intervention in pending property tax assessment appeals before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, Hampton Inn, PTAB docket number 2022-02633. And Resolution number 2023-07-076R, a resolution authorizing city intervention in pending property tax assessment appeals before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, Willowbrook PTAB docket number 2022-02875 for approval.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Chandra. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Lissetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes.
And the first item on the regular agenda, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I'd like to recommend ordinance number 2023-07-021, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9, omnibus, with a recommendation for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Chandra. Will the clerk, or is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Mayor Marlin?
Yes. That motion passes.
Next, I'd like to recommend ordinance number 2023-07-022, an ordinance amending a redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality LLC for approval on behalf of the Committee of the Whole.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? And I will note that you received a follow-up memo from Carol, the city administrator. The ordinance that you discussed last week has not changed, and the amendment to the redevelopment agreement was revised per your direction. So section 2 that referred to a reduction in the reimbursement amount was removed per your direction. Otherwise, everything's the same. Discussion? James?
Yes, since I wasn't able to participate last week because I was out of town and not qualified to participate remotely because of my absence, I did want to mention this. I was probably one of the individuals who, in the council 2x2's discussions of this, who suggested the idea of a reduction of compensation if the project missed another due date. And that was because there's a long way to go with this project. I was able to avail myself of a tour. I'm very hopeful. I'm very appreciative of the work that's been done. I'm looking forward to the outcome, but I was concerned about when I read that the comment was it's 90% complete. It's not 90% complete. If you've been inside of it, that's not the case. And so I suggested that idea of a diminishing compensation model as a way to set a future time at which we would no longer accept further delays. I do appreciate that it's its own penalty. The delay means that the organization is not making money. There's not people staying there. There's not income coming in. That's a penalty from a business perspective. But there has to be some sense of urgency to complete this project, and that it's not a set of goalposts that can move, every 3 or 4 months. I have high hopes for the vision and how it's starting to come together. I don't know if it's 50% done. I don't know if it's 75% done. It's not 90% done. So if we have this extension, and this is, I think, to February, if we're having this conversation again in February, I'm going to be adamant that there has to be some kind of counter incentive. It's not uncommon in this kind of development program or in a construction project to have hard deadlines for developers to meet to accomplish the reimbursement that they expect from city funds. And so I'm okay with it as it is right now, but I just wanted to share, that's why I suggested that in the meeting that Chris and I attended together. And that's why I think if we're having this conversation again in February, and I'm worried that we might be, I'm going to insist on it at that time. Thanks.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, I just have to agree with James. I was away last week as well. My thoughts were very similar in that I think that we've been accommodating to all of the supply chain problems and the labor constraints that have happened. I'm very pleased to see when I came and saw what they had done, but the kitchen isn't in. There's big components that aren't in yet. They're certainly finishing up the rooms. But I don't think that, very hard for me to estimate the percentage that is complete, but I am going to be very reticent to extend this beyond February, and I won't extend it with the beyond February with the same amount that we're already committed to. So I just kind of wanted to make that public statement so that everybody is aware. Thank you.
Jaya.
Yeah, thank you. I would echo, even though I was here, I felt like putting something that was arbitrary or moving didn't feel appropriate to me. But I meant it very seriously, too, that if they are advertising the hotel to be open in November and they do not complete it until February, that is a complete breaking of trust with our community, and I expect that they will actually be honest with our community, especially if they come back asking for another extension. I do not anticipate approving another extension. I think we've been very patient and understanding with good reason. There are good reasons for the delays, but we also do expect that understanding and honesty from people doing business in Urbana as well.
Any other comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Next, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I'd like to recommend ordinance number 2023-07-023, an ordinance approving a preliminary planned unit development, Hope Village Plan Case 4276 PUD 23 for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Chandra. Discussion.
Mary Alice.
I did listen to the recorded meeting. I did want to ask, I know that traditionally what we've seen is we've seen a preliminary and a final PUD that comes to city council. I've been the one person who says, I'd like to see them broken apart. I'd like to see the preliminary and the final. So it's nice to be able to see the preliminary in this case. So I appreciate that. I'm wondering if somebody from community development can talk a little bit about, in a preliminary plan, what is, in terms of the layout, and from what I'm hearing from the residents is there's a concern about the impact on the neighborhood. And the impact that I can foresee are traffic, problems with water or sewage, flooding. Those are the types of things that I can see an impact on the neighborhood. So I wanted to know, in the preliminary plan, especially when we're talking about retention ponds, sewer, water, all that kind of stuff, how is that envisioned when we talk about the preliminary one?
Sure. So,
We have Kevin Garcia.
oh yes, Kevin
Zoning
Garcia,
Administrator.
Principal Planner. So the preliminary plans are pretty preliminary, and in this case in particular, I think the Plan Commission had some concerns about things like where the detention basin was located. So they recommended, I'd say, that this be treated as even more preliminary and not to, so the final recommendation is that the final site plan is not constrained by the preliminary site plan. But really in this process, the final PUD is where those detailed engineering plans would come in. So in your council memo, I'll just go through these things that come about in the final PUD. So the final PUD is a specific site plan. You have a landscape plan, a stormwater plan, utilities plan, and building elevations, and then a development program and schedule. So really the final PUD is when you get the very detailed site plans. The preliminary PUD is just for sort of the concept.
Okay, well, this gets a little complicated in that by right, they can build what they have right now, right? So they can build the community center, they can build the one home.
That's
by
correct,
right. So they don't
yes.
really need to come to us for that.
Yes.
So I'm trying to marry that with the PUD preliminary plan, which is basically a layout of what they envision the community to look at. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if this is approved, what does that mean for the project?
Yeah, so I'd say if council goes along with the recommendation from Plan Commission, where the final site plan is not constrained by the preliminary site plan, I'd say what you're approving is the general uses, so that there's going to be a community center, there's going to be 30 homes, there's going to be a system of pathways. It's going to connect to Carver Drive. And I think beyond that, all of any sort of nuance with the plan can be saved for discussions for the final PUD.
So typically, and we've had this conversation with Public Works in the past with the engineers and so forth. I remember specifically when we were talking about Tapman's in terms of whether or not they needed to review a detention area. So does this particular project require a review by our city engineers?
It will when it's at the final stage.
And it's at the final stage, so
Yes.
there will be city review of
Yes.
all of those infrastructure elements, including detention, water detention, sewer, water lines, et cetera.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Chris, we'll just go down the line.
So, Kevin, is building a community center going to cause problems with the sewage? I mean, we're saying it's going to be reviewed later, but is building the community center going to cause problems?
Well, so building the community center, they'll have to have plans that, that show the stormwater for just that site, or for just building the community center. So it will not cause flooding problems as long as it's built to the plans that are approved by the city engineer.
What about Grace's question last week, which is why are we going up and down Carver when we could be going on the other side as far as traffic?
Well, I mean, that could be a question for the project team to answer. But, typically, so Carver dead ends there. And I think, and Dory Miller also dead ends if you go further east, although they're not planning to connect to that. So just looking at the way that the streets were set up, they were always envisioned to connect to something. That land to the north is zoned for multifamily residential, so ostensibly somebody could build multifamily. They could build apartment buildings up there, and it would connect to Carver. It would likely connect to Dory Miller. It may connect to Federal Drive as well. But the pattern of development indicates that something's going to connect to Carver once that farmland gets built on.
Sharice.
Okay, so this is my issue regarding the connection. The connection meaning the land is located in Urbana, granted, and how the boundaries are and so on and so forth. Federal Drive leads right in, it's also in Urbana. Therefore, it makes more sense to me that you dance with the one that brung you, okay? You go around Federal Drive. Carver Drive is in Champaign. And Carver Drive historically has been a very light-weighted traffic area. And when I say light-weighted, I mean not more than the residents have driven through Carver Drive for the 60 years I've been on this planet, okay? And so not knowing what kind of traffic or there's not even been a traffic study of how that's going to go. You have Federal Drive. In my opinion, you could flip the whole plan and use Federal Drive. What I've heard from the folks that have want to just connect with it, is that it's not convenient. The other thing I haven't heard is, and I talked to Davion Williams, I asked him if he had heard, Davion, by the way, is the representative for that area in Champaign. He's my counterpart, so to speak, in Champaign. He's not heard anything about Hope Village going through Carver Park. That's what he told me. When I talked to the site manager, the site engineer, he said he just designs what he's told to design. When I asked what the hurry was, why is there such a hurry to get this started and to impose and to violate, to me, the residents of Carver Park, he could not give me an answer to that. So I think that my issue is not helping people. My issue is that you don't violate someone else's rights so that you can go on and do what you want to do for convenience, because that's what you want to do. You really need to take into consideration the fact that Carver Park residents do not want to be connected that way, because they're not comfortable with the traffic, the traffic hypothetical, let me put it that way, problem that it could cause. And I have driven up through Carver Park. I have driven up through around Federal Drive, and the street width's probably a little bit wider on Federal Drive because it's an industrial area. But residents in Carver Park, where that dead ends, they park on the street. There are a lot of little niches in that area. And there's nowhere in Carver Park, when you drive up through on Carver Drive, there's a little curvy area there. And that area has never really been heavily trafficked. And I've known that area all my life. So I really would want to beg the developers' understanding as to why this is an issue for this community. Because basically what you're doing is you're changing the entire atmosphere of that particular subdivision by saying, oh, we'll just, and there is something in the plan that says that maybe later there will be another access road via Dory Miller. So there's just something, something to folks being overlooked or dismissed in this particular plan. And I don't know if it's a Champaign thing. I don't know what it is, but I do know that this could stand to be studied further. If not studied further, at least giving the developers an opportunity to have more engagement with the Carver Park area and with the north end of Urbana area, other than 2 meetings. The 2 meetings aren't getting it. They're not answering the questions that many people have. And I think that it needs to be, when I spoke to Claudia and Marty, right, when was this, back in March? So since March, there has been an opportunity for more than 2 meetings, at the very least. And this just going on and doing what you want to do does not enhance atmosphere or of trust between the community and your institutions. And I really think that it is important that you have that trust. You want people to have your back when you're doing such a project as this. You want people, and the folks that have come here to speak tonight have said that they are not against having that particular project, but they do want more answers. And I think that you owe it to a community that you've not engaged with very much in 100 years, that you might want to try to engage with them now. And I think that just flipping the plan around so that the access is on Federal Drive would make a heap of difference in how this particular project is welcomed into our community.
Mary Alice, would you take the chair? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, James.
I would like to comment on this. I have to say that when this plan came before us as part of our review of the funding for the ARPA grants, I envisioned this as coming off of Federal Drive, because I can remember looking at it and how it was proposed and how the land was identified and thinking, well, you know, it's a self-contained thing. I was a little bit worried about it coming off of Federal Drive because that is an industrial area, because I remember having that thought process. And so this picture is not the picture that I envisioned when we had that proposal in front of us. So I supported it in the model that it was. I can also remember thinking about some of the resources that this was going to need could be shared with the resources at another site that might be nearby that might be used for housing on North Lincoln Avenue, and that there might be some, because of how they could be connected in that way, that there might be some opportunity of scale. As it stands right now, because I now know that this is not approving the final plan, that there's time for the final plan to look very different, I'm less concerned. But I am concerned about it coming the way it is described here, and I'm even more concerned because Mr. Lewis's comments, and I know him to be an expert in this area, even though he doesn't want to put himself out there as an expert for us, that there are some infrastructure questions that have to be answered here. You know, my untrained eye lets me look at this and say, oh, maybe some of those infrastructure questions could be better managed if it came off of Federal Drive because of the way that easement goes through there. Maybe not. I'm not trained in that. So I want this project to go forward. It serves the need that we need to address. But as this plan looks, I think I'm going to agree with Sharice that it needs to change to be something that I would approve a final plan for. And I do support the concept of it coming off of Federal Drive instead and how that works out. I don't understand how the future development works in this picture. There's a thing labeled future development where there doesn't seem any way that it can be future developed here. And so if you flip it around and maybe design it in such a way that there's future paths, if it works out and people are more comfortable with it, the neighborhood sees how it works and becomes more comfortable, maybe the future development comes closer to the neighborhood. But that's how I feel about it. I don't want to stop the project, but I can tell you that I would not support a future final plan that looks like this.
Would you like me to take the?
Chandra.
Oh, I'm not going
I'll
to.
wait till everyone's got a chance. Go ahead, Chandra.
It says in the Q&A session of the packet here, a community member asked if flooding would be an issue. Chad Osterberg, the project engineer, gave an overview of the stormwater management plan and stated that flooding would not be an issue. Do you recall, Kevin, the synopsis of the stormwater management plan that he showed? Like, does that?
I don't recall seeing an actual plan
Okay.
yet.
But I mean, if okay, I guess that's another question. If the project engineer said there wouldn't be an issue with flooding, I would assume there was some sort of research and something that went into his plan creation or whatever he went over. But again, since this isn't the final project or final PUD, then there would be some room for more input on this stormwater management plan.
Do we have any representatives for the project team here? Could you answer these questions? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and please introduce yourself for the record. Could you make sure your mic's on? It should be green light.
There we
Green
go.
light.
Chad Osterber with Fairgram Engineering.
Bridget Wakefield, Reef Stick Reading Company Architects.
Brian Kessler, Architectural Expressions.
Okay. Would you like to ask your questions again, Chandra?
So it says here that Chad, the project engineer, gave an overview of the stormwater management plan and stated that flooding would not be an issue. I guess could you sort of?
Where did that, just out of curiosity, where did that conversation come from?
It is Exhibit C, summary of the June 20th, 2023 neighborhood meeting in the question and answer session.
Yeah, I don't recall, but, so we are, while we are here for a preliminary development plan that you're seeing, it's conceptual. You know, we've continued to work through the infrastructure and develop that further. Hope Village will have its own storm sewer system internal to it. It is independent of Carver Park storm sewer. The detention, it all discharges into the detention basin, which serves as the stormwater management. And it will have its own outlet that actually runs north towards the industrial park to the north. So Carver Park actually drains to the south. These will be two separate systems that we are not in any way impacting the Carver Park storm sewers.
I think the other, we've heard comment related to the city water main running through the property at a 45-degree angle. That water main is currently not in use. Illinois American Water is abandoning that line, and in fact, have already drafted the vacating of the easement and is presented to our attorneys for review. So that water line is not being used, no longer will be used, and the easement is being vacated.
For further clarity on that, it's actually not a supply main or a distribution main. It's not potable water. It was a raw water main that they use for supply for their plants. So,
Are we allowed to clarify a few of the issues that went into where it's located, north versus south?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay.
Please pull that microphone closer to your.
Sure, no problem. Some of the issues that we looked at, obviously we have people who, a lot of them do not have cars, and that's partly why we're going after a planned unit development, because we have sought to actually reduce the number of parking spaces. So the number of cars going along Carver is not going to be very many. It's going to be the handful of employees or people coming through there. We really looked at bus service was a big thing. There's about 50 stops to the north and over 250 stops a week to the south. The ones to the north are very limited. MTD doesn't even go in there except for some special limited service looping off of one of their main routes, just one route. So you're very limited in where you can get from there even. We also looked at this as the Urbana master plan shows that this area is industrial in the way that it's supposed to be, up near that Federal Drive. And we looked at this development as actually being able to shield the residential area from what might be developed north of there. I know there was discussions of why wouldn't you develop this north, and then whatever develops in between goes towards, and you don't know what that in between is. So we felt this single family style development was fit to go next to the single family residential area.
Any other technical questions while we have the experts? Sharice?
Okay, so my question, you were talking about the MTD access is basically to the bus line is what you're talking about, but at the same time, you're also saying that a lot of the people that will be living there won't be really have to be transported much more than, I guess, over to Carl for services and such, which you have that little shuttle bus that I'm sure that will do that. But my other question is this: why can this project not then get some kind of memo of understanding with MTD or intergovernmental agreement with MTD that a line go as far as Federal Drive down Killarney and Kenyon Road, and you can have a turnaround up there where it can come back out. But in that way, people that live in that area will have bus access, and it will be totally between you, but it may also help the students that live in that area. There are a lot of apartments in that area where the bus stops on Lincoln Avenue. It's very dangerous. And they stop there. But it could, I could see no, it's just, Carver Drive is not there for your convenience. You do have Federal Drive that you can work from.
MTD on another project that we're working on right now, actually, when we asked them to add a bus route to that area because they were short on nighttime bus routes to get a LEED sustainability rating, you have to have a certain number of daytime and nighttime and weekend routes. And they said, absolutely not, they're not adding any routes right now because they're pretty low on staff and resources. And so, not saying, we didn't ask them for this one, but I know recently they haven't wanted to add routes to other areas.
I will add, we have had meetings with the MTD recently, since Bridget was involved and wouldn't have been part of that yet. But and we discussed bus service and the ability to get individual shuttle service for these residents. They would qualify, so that will help get door-to-door service by appointment. We did talk about the bus routes, and I don't want to speak on behalf of MTD. It seems to be extremely complicated to just send a bus a different direction and add a line and add a route. As Bridget mentioned, if you research the lines, there are a number of various lines serving other parts of the community to the Carver Drive, Lincoln, or Bradley site. Very few serving all the way up around off of Federal Drive and Kenyon Road. From a selection standpoint, Hope Village is a residential development. It's a residential community, and it fits in the residential area. Federal Drive is a commercial development, an industrial development up there, and this fits very well against the Carver Drive neighborhood. It's an extension of residential use. We're very concerned about impact to the Carver Drive neighborhood, and we need to address that. There will be no parking on Carver Drive related to this project. All of our parking is contained within the project. We've got an employee base of 7 to 10 people, so there'll be minimal traffic every day, in the morning, out at night, and again, self-contained parking. There'll be very few residents with cars, and we'll have a limit to the number of cars it could even be. If you have a resident, you'll have to have a permit or apply to have a car there because we only have so many parking spaces that we're going to allow for that. As it relates to traffic, Carver Drive is a straight shot from the project to Bradley Avenue. It has great access for emergency vehicles, ambulance, fire, police. If you take the route and drive around Kenyon and loop your way through, there's no access onto Lincoln Avenue. So you're really winding through what seems to be parking lots as you go through the hotel area. You get off to the Kenyon Road area and then access Federal Drive, and it's very difficult to get up into that area. So really, this is going to have minimal impact traffic-wise. Even the construction traffic, we're not going to allow workers to park on Carver Drive or within the neighborhood. The parking will be contained within the site. Other questions related to future development, no one knows what's going to develop north of this site. It's not intended to be Hope Village. As a reminder, this project came about and is really a community collaborative and a partnership based on a significant need that's been identified in this community. CCHC, Claudia and her team, have identified this population that needs service and needs help. They did not have the resources to put a project like this up themselves. So they came to Carl and to the University of Illinois, and we agreed as community partners to help get this project established. The project is Hope Village, Inc. And as this project has continued to progress, and that's why we're here tonight, it's an evolving, progressive project. We went from concept, identifying the need, to concept, to coming here, seeking approval for the project through the ARPA funds, at which point we feel the city of Urbana now became our community partner as well by approving the funds for this project. And as that project evolved, we continued to address and meet with neighbors and the neighborhood to seek the concerns so we can address those concerns. And we're continuing to do that. We want to be transparent and engaged with the neighborhood at the beginning of the project, during the construction of the project, and at the end of the project during operations, so that we really are an integral part of the Carver Drive neighborhood. I'm not sure how we can address the historical issues that continue to come up in this project, because you're not wrong. They are issues that have been historical with this neighborhood and other areas of Urbana. But Hope Village isn't in a position to solve some of those historical needs. We're here to be part of the neighborhood, and I believe we're going to bring an enhancement to the area. We're going to serve an immediate need within the community, and it's going to be a project that this community can be proud of. It's going to be a model case project for many communities across the country, done in a collaborative partnership method with community members and the city partnering together to bring this project about.
Thank you. Any other technical questions? I'm going to give other council members a chance to ask a question. Chris?
Okay. I want to go back to what I'm concerned about, Marty, is the construction vehicle. You got 30 homes to build in a community center. I just don't like construction trucks and equipment going up Carver Drive. Is there any way just to keep that on Federal?
Federal Drive.
Yeah, keep it on Federal.
Well, I guess we're going to have to figure out how to come across this ag property, okay? I mean, it's soft dirt coming from a long distance.
Okay, I haven't been out there to look at it.
Yeah.
So Federal Drive doesn't go directly to the site?
Federal Drive dead ends at the
Okay.
north edge of the property,
All
much
right.
like Carver Drive dead ends at the south end of the project.
Okay.
Okay. So again, we can do what we can to divert construction traffic, and if there are occasional deliveries that somehow can come off of Federal, it's something that we'd want to look at. But I can't commit to bringing every vehicle off of Federal when there's no road and there's no street to get to the project.
Okay. Big question is, what is the consequences of delaying at this point?
So we've identified a need, and people are in desperate need now. Okay, so we can delay. We can delay any project. But one of the concerns here is that in the initial grant funding that's been available, it's for projects in the conceptual stage and getting ready to start. Additional funding, additional resources are going to come when there's a project that you can see and touch and feel and understand what we're building here. So we are in an urgency mode to get the community building and the single tiny home up, which we can do by right today, so that we've got a project that you can see, a project that you can understand what we're building, and then we can gather additional community resources, either through civic organizations, foundations, philanthropy efforts, and other potential grants.
Well, I'm not, when I say delay, I'm only thinking at most a couple months so we can have more community meetings, but are you saying that's a disaster?
It would be a disaster for our project. I mean, it would put the project in serious jeopardy.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding communications. Yes, we've had 2 meetings in the neighborhood at 2 different churches. We distributed announcements about the meetings and the project and brochures far and wide. For the last meeting that was at Free Will Baptist Church, New Free Will Baptist Church, we delivered 500 letters. We went far and beyond what we were required to do or what anybody expected to do. I myself, I know I look maybe a different age. I am 57 years old. I was out there with the team from Healthcare Consumers for hours in the heat, going door to door, leaving these letters. We spoke to dozens and dozens of residents who happened to be sitting out, in their lawn chairs, in their garages, or whatever. Not a single person we spoke with expressed opposition. They said, "Thank you for doing this," and they said, "Bless you." They told us about their own struggles with homelessness or a family member who is homeless. We took some names down in case, the project gets built and that person might be eligible to live there. But what I wanted to say is at these community meetings that we had, we gave contact information for questions. Today is the first time that we are hearing about some of these objections and some of these questions. Nobody has contacted us about that. We are trying to be open and transparent and accessible to the residents. And the people who we spoke to, or who I personally spoke to when I was out there, and I know the rest of the healthcare consumer staff did too, we said, we will keep y'all updated along the way when there are updates to give. And that is our commitment. I'm the director of Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, and that is my pledge to you. We are not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to get over on anybody. We have been trying to communicate real information and be available for people if they had questions. Not a single person, maybe one person approached with questions over email or by phone. We're happy to answer the questions. We're happy to work with residents and work through some of these issues.
Thank you. Any technical questions? Chandra?
I also noticed that there will be advisory boards that neighborhood residents can participate in from your Exhibit E here. Could you speak a little bit more about that and what that advisory board would look like, when it will start, what the requirements of becoming a board member, et cetera?
So we don't have all the details on that yet, but we are absolutely planning to have advisory committees who can give advice, direction, raise concerns, and so on with the board of directors. There will be a board of directors for Hope Village. Everybody who will serve on that board, just like any other board for any other organization, will have to be committed to the mission of Hope Village. It'll be a working board, but we will set up advisory or community committees to correspond with us. Some people have expressed interest, so when we are ready to announce those, we will make sure we get the word out and get people engaged and involved if they are ready to do that. But we are early on in the operational planning, and so we don't have those details yet, but that is a commitment that we have made. And so neighborhood residents can anticipate the announcement of that, and we would welcome them to serve on those advisory committees once we have them ready.
James?
Yeah, just a quick technical question. We were talking about access road for construction from federal. Are you not buying all of this land? Are you buying all of it?
We are. It's one tract. It's a 12-acre tract.
Okay,
Okay.
so building, having a gravel access road from federal down for the construction, that would be your property, and you would just be losing agricultural tillable land by giving that up, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other technical questions for the engineers and architects here and project managers? Sharice?
I guess the one thing that has caught my attention and kept my attention in talking to different people, because I did talk to Chad on Friday, and the thing is that right now, because my intent is to make sure that there would be no issues in the future, okay? And the issues that's there right now for me is just the basic dismissal. I don't care how many letters you put in somebody's door and stuff like that. If you have not engaged in that community, if you haven't talked to somebody, even I got to talk to at least one person in Carver Park that was not with the whole program. And he felt like he wasn't getting a lot of information. He felt like he was being told this is what's going to happen instead of informed. It was like, oh, well, this is what we're going to do. That was his feeling. And I think that's the feeling of a lot of residents in that area, is that they don't feel like they're really being informed as much as they're just being told, this is how it's going to be, which is why I brought up the whole thing about flipping the plan itself so that the access road is Federal Drive. Because, and I was told that one only designs what they're told to design and how they're told to design it. So in actuality, you can change the design if you choose to. Okay, if you choose to. And that would probably alleviate at least 50% of the questions and issues that the surrounding community that you want to engage in and you want to be partners with and you want to work so hard with, that would probably alleviate many questions and many issues that they have, just flipping that plan.
Is there a question in there?
Right, so my question is, why don't you just flip the plan?
Okay, he answered that.
No,
Are there any additional technical questions with the architects and engineers here?
Would you like me to take the chair?
Yes, please.
All right, I will take the chair, and the chair recognizes Diane.
I wanted to make a comment and remind us of something. First of all, some of the larger context. Just Urbana, yes, allocated about $850,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding. The team came to Urbana because we solicited proposals for addressing housing insecurities in the community. And people in this community, and I don't mean just Urbana, but throughout Champaign County, people have been working for years to identify gaps in service where we aren't providing the services that are needed, particularly in areas like housing. And this particular project addresses, as you've heard, a need that is not being addressed right now. And I'm hearing, especially tonight, I'm hearing Carver neighborhood versus, which is Champaign, it's in the city of Champaign, versus Urbana. And I want to remind folks that homeless people are people without addresses. And there are people who are former Urbana residents, perhaps, who will live in this project, but I can guarantee you there are many more former Champaign residents who will live in this project as well. This project is going to serve people throughout the county, frankly. So we don't want to assign cities to the people who will live there. Yes, they will be located in the city of Urbana. That's where this property is. But why wouldn't a Champaign street give those people access to their homes in that neighborhood? It's a public street. It's a public street. And we have to remind ourselves that folks who need this kind of help don't have addresses. They're not Urbana, they're not Champaign, they're just people who need our help and who are not getting the kind of help that they need right now. So I want to let us all step back and think about who we're talking about and where they may have lived now or where they could live in the future. Okay, I'll take the chair back.
I'll relinquish the chair back to Diane.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all of the information, all the residents who come out to speak on this issue, the project individuals who've been working on this, and I think that there's an opportunity for us to reflect on where we are. This is a preliminary, right? Most of what's being asked, they can do by right. They didn't have to ask our permission. I think that's important to state, that it's important that we're having these community conversations. It's important that we continue to do so as the plan moves forward. But part of what's on the table right now is something that we would have to break our own rules to go against. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think that when we're talking about what resources we're going to provide for the community, whether it's approving a housing development, an apartment building, or if it's talking about tiny homes, or if it's talking about a new business, there's a reason why these rules are in place. They're supposed to make sure that we're providing a consistent process for everyone. And so while I think it's important that we continue to have the conversations about what is this finally going to look like, right? When it's all done and said, make use of those continued public meetings, make use of the different ways to contact people. And I do expect, Urbana is a partner in this, right? We contributed funds to this project. We expect that of folks that we partner with, that there will be that community engagement. But much of what's being asked for is something that could have already happened. And so I think it's important that we're keeping that in perspective as we move this conversation forward, that there are opportunities to guide where this goes moving forward. But for this to happen, we also have to give it the space to happen. I don't think anyone has debated the fact that there is a pressing need for folks without homes. We've had record-breaking heat. We've had brutal winters. I know many social service providers who were up all hours of the night in agony, desperately trying to find people somewhere to put their heads so they didn't freeze to death in their cars. We need these resources, and I think it's really important that we do it in a community-centered way, that we do it in a way that's acknowledging that we're not existing in a vacuum. We have to have these conversations about the distrust that very warrantedly exists. But in order to be able to move forward, in order to be able to make sure that residents in our community, whether you're saying it's Champaign, it's Urbana, it's our community. These are people who live with us, who may have had a medical emergency, who made it so now they don't have a home anymore. If they don't have relatives to fall back on, where do they go? So I'm asking for compassion and for consistency as we're applying these rules, whether it's talking about this homeless resource or any other. These are our community members, and they deserve a place to live.
Any other technical questions? Well, Mary Alice.
Well, I have a technical question for the staff. Is that allowed?
That's allowable.
Okay, all right. So I know the Plan Commission had, was it 4 or 5 conditions that they had put on here, and staff had recommended to remove some of those?
That's correct.
I think you recommended to remove the community meeting. You recommended to remove that it doesn't have to adhere, the final plat doesn't have to adhere to the preliminary. Can you speak a little bit towards that piece right there? I mean, because what I'm hearing tonight is that this is, we are evolving, that this whole concept is evolving, and every step that we take, we learn more information and hopefully have a better end. Right? So my question to staff is, why remove that?
Sure. So at the time of the Plan Commission hearing, the project team had held one neighborhood meeting. Between Plan Commission and Committee of the Whole last week, they held a second neighborhood meeting. So essentially that condition had already been met, so it didn't make sense to include it since Plan Commission's recommendation was you should have a second meeting. They had that second meeting already. The other changes to this was to remove the first condition that said no construction on the site can be can occur before final approval of the final PUD. Well, since part of this could be built by right, it's not really within our power to say, no, you can't build those things by right. So we recommended striking that condition. And then there were sort of cleanup of a couple of the other conditions that they put on there. The main one was that the one about the final site plan being responsive to the neighborhood concerns. It was just, we felt a little vague, and it'd be really hard to pin down. So we just changed that to say that the final site plan is responsive to the concerns of neighboring residents. We've heard many concerns thus far. I imagine we will continue to hear concerns. There will probably be more neighborhood meetings for the final PUD, because that's where all the details happen. So did I answer your question?
Yes, I apologize. I'm looking at my phone because
Okay.
we don't actually have a copy of it. So I guess my next question is in terms of process. Thank you for the PUD. One of the things that we put in the PUD process was that you have to have a neighborhood meeting. So my question to you is, since this is split between the preliminary and the final, is there also already a requirement on the books for a final PUD to have a neighborhood meeting?
So there is not. The way we wrote that zoning ordinance text, is that if you had a neighborhood meeting before the, or for the preliminary one, then that would qualify for the final. So you could add a condition that says you will have at least another neighborhood meeting
That's what I'm
for
thinking.
the final PUD, since it probably will be a little bit of time before that comes in, so.
Yeah, yeah, so I'm thinking it's appropriate for us to modify that condition, that recommendation from the Plan Commission. It certainly doesn't put a stop, so to speak, but it continues the conversation, and it shows that the city and the applicants are willing to have further conversations with the neighborhood. So I guess that was my technical question.
Okay, great. We have a motion on the floor for the approval of ordinance 2023-07-023. Am I hearing that you might want to modify or add a condition?
Yeah, I would like to modify, so the staff had recommended removing the additional meeting, which was item number 4 from the Plan Commission. I'd like to put that back in and say an additional meeting with the public will be conducted prior to the final PUD application.
Is that acceptable to the movers?
Yes.
Sandra?
Yes.
Okay. So this ordinance would have the condition added back in that had been removed regarding a neighborhood meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think it's time to take a vote on this.
I'd like to say something.
Mary Alice, do you want to speak to your motion?
I want to, well, yeah, I guess I want to speak a little more broadly. First, I want to thank everybody who came out, expressed your concerns. I want to thank everybody who's sitting right in front of us right now at the table. It was very helpful to have you here and to have your expertise to help us understand a little bit more what's gone into this project. But more broadly, I mean, this is, we were granted this wonderful opportunity to be able to spend $12 million in our community. And this type of project, I know, Claudia, you've been working towards healthcare for decades almost. And really, I would just want to say kudos to you, because this is, I know from the heart, this is a project that you've really felt near and dear. So thank you for all of your attention to our residents and our community and our county. I'm in support of the concept of the plan. Okay, I've been in support. I voted for it in ARPA. I will vote for it again. I think, and I'm hoping that the message is very loud and clear for the community people who came. Please engage with the people who are going to be working on the Hope Village. And hopefully we will also have a meeting where more people can come. So there's many opportunities, and I hope people will avail themselves of those.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Now, this is the vote for the motion that was just made.
This is the vote for the amendment to the motion,
All righty.
correct? Is that what we do?
You have to have a vote for your, for the motion that was made and seconded, and the motion that, the amendment to the motion.
Okay,
that
so
was
we'll vote for the
prepared.
amendment first and then the full motion.
Final
Okay,
motion,
so this
yes.
vote is for adding the community meeting back.
Can I just make a point of order? I don't know if anybody actually seconded my motion. Chandra did? Okay, I just want to make sure that procedurally we're fine.
A friendly amendment. Okay, good. All right, we're all
Then
we're all
there's
on the
no
same
what?
page. All right. So we'll just vote on the ordinance that's before us, as amended.
You're not supposed to vote on that.
So we're voting on ordinance number 2023-07-023, as amended.
This is going to be the final vote
Yes.
tonight. Okay. Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
No.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Finally, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I'd like to recommend resolution number 2023-07-077R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium subrecipient agreement, CU at Home LLC, Men's Non-Congregate, I think that's supposed to say Mid-Barrier Shelter Home, ARP, fiscal year 2021/2022, with a recommendation for approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Jay, is seconded by Chandra. Is there discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item on the agenda are reports of special committees. We have none. There are no, any reports of officers? There are none. There is no new business. Last item on the agenda are a couple of appointments and reappointments. Appointments are new appointments to the Human Relations Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2026, and that is for Shalini Smith. She's a 6-year resident of Urbana, is an archives librarian at the Urbana Free Library, information services librarian at Parkland College. Her duties include processing, cataloging materials, assisting patrons by providing research and reference services, performing collection development, assisting with programming outreach. She is an active member on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee at the Urbana Free Library. Part of her statement included the quote, "I believe it's up to us to play a part in ending discrimination and inequality in our community. That being said, I think being on this commission is a way that I can play my part. I would be honored to serve on the commission." The other new appointment is to the Urbana-Champaign Big Broadband UC2B Board for a term ending June 30th, 2026. This is, you may not know much about this board, but this board was formed years ago when the original broadband fiber was installed in the city, and the community-based board was formed along with it for, first of all, to promote installation of I3 and promote access to it, and now they have shifted to a focus on digital equity and making sure everyone, most everyone has physical access to the fiber, or the fibers to the home, but it's how to make it, bring it into the home and make it affordable for folks, and make sure people are able to use it. So Sebastian Kelly is a 4-year resident of Urbana. He's an senior instructional designer in the computer science department at the U of I. He serves as a member of the Independent Media Center's technical committee. He has a strong background in digital accessibility and is passionate about promoting inclusivity within the community. And this was a recommendation from Paul Hickson. Sebastian, not only has a technical background, but just as importantly has a passion for how to help those who are currently underserved gain better access and better technical skills. And then the reappointments are for 2 individuals who currently are serving on the UC2B board, and their terms both end in June of 2026, and their statements are there as well. So I would look for a motion for these 4, let's do the 2 appointments first.
I will move approval for the 2 appointments for Shalani Smith and Sebastian Kell.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And the reappointments are for Connie Dillard and Paul Hickson. Is there a motion?
I move for the reappointment of Connie Dillard and Paul Hickson to the Urbana-Champaign Big Broadband Board in terms ending June 30th, 2026. For both.
Second.
Moved by Sharice, seconded by Mary Alice. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms.
Actually, could I
Colacetti?
make a correction here? That should be June 30th rather than July.
I said June.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
It's written July on mine.
Oh.
Am I looking at the wrong version?
You're looking at the wrong one.
Okay.
Both of mine say
Ms.
June.
Colacetti?
It's
Yes.
June. All right. Good enough.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. With no further business before this council, this meeting is adjourned.